in this video, I want to talk about inflation. I want to talk about what it is in terms of definition and the different types of inflation that we have in the economy. Oftentimes you hear that inflation is going up, but do we know what that means? And do we know how that impacts our pocketbooks and how, we feel the pinch of inflation going up? So let's take a closer look at this very important concept. All right, so by definition, then inflation is the greatest, right? The greatest economic indicator on the rate of rising prices of goods, right? So goods and services in the economy, right? The rising price of goods and services in the economy. Now, this is a very important definition because it plays a key role and tells us how we are doing as an economy. How the economy is doing, right? So it is usually measured as a percentage. So you usually see inflation is rising by 1.2%, by 3%, by 4%, whatever the case may be. So it's usually measured by percentage, and that percentage then tells us the decrease, right? Tells us the decrease of the buying power of citizens, right? So again, it tells us how much the money that you have in your pocket, how much it can get you essentially, right? If you go to the grocery store, how much that money can get you. Inflation gives us that measurement, right? So it tells us the decrease of the buying power of citizens in that country, in that particular society. And then the percentage also shows if there has been an increase, right, on one hand, or a decrease on the other hand from the last time we did the calculation on inflation. And this tells us whether we're doing well or not, how well the economy is doing, right? Do we need to put more effort into the economy, or are we happy with the way the economy is? So the percentage that we get after we measure the rate of inflation, right, will give us a sense as to whether or not we are doing well as compared to the last time that we calculated inflation, right? So again, it says the percentage shows if there has been an increase or a decrease from the last calculation of inflation, right? And then it also says the major factor to note here, which is very important, the major factor is that about inflation is that as it goes up, right, the value of the money goes down. As inflation rises, right, you can buy less with the money in your pocket, right? So for example, inflation is 1.2%, and the last time it was 1%. $50 in your pocket the last time could buy 3 bags of rice, but now it can buy 2 bags of rice, right? So as inflation goes up, the value of the money decreases. And that's what inflation is all about. It's a great economic indicator for how we are doing in society, as a society, economically, how the value is of the currency that we are using, and how much it can buy today as opposed to how much it bought maybe a few weeks ago. Now, there are 3 types of inflation, right? The first one is the demand pull inflation. Now, what is this type of inflation? Well, this is when the demand for goods and services is higher in comparison to the production capacity of the economy, right? So the shortfall in production results in price appreciation. Right, so the shortfall then is very important because that shortfall then means that prices of products will go up, right? There's more demand than what is being put out by the economy, and that shortfall then is responsible for the increase in price, and this is known as price appreciation. All right, so the second one is cost push inflation. This happens when the cost of production increases. The cost of production increase in price of raw material and labor cause the cost of production to go up, right? And then because the cost of production has gone up, it results in the increase of the price of products because it costs more to produce the products, right? So that is responsible for the increase in the price of products because it costs more to produce the products. That's cost push inflation. And the final one is built-in inflation, which is also known as anticipatory inflation, right? We expect inflation in the next 1 year, 2 years. The price of things are always going up. They never stay the same. There is always adjustment for the cost of living. That's what inflation is all about. So this is anticipatory inflation that is factored into wages to account for future inflation and enable workers to afford the increase in the price of products or cost of living, right? So a kind of measure in the next 1 year, inflation will be, for example, 1.5%. And then we build that into wages so that workers could adjust to the cost of living and they'll be able to buy products, right? And sometimes the increase in wages result in the increase in the cost of production, and invariably the cost of everyday production, and this leads to a circular pattern. Right? It goes around and around and around, right? So this is anticipatory inflation that is factored into the wages that we earn in society to account for future inflation and enable workers to afford the increase in the price of products and cost of living. So we anticipate in the next 1 year, in the next 2 years, that the price of milk will go up, and then we'll build that into wages, right? But that fact alone also means that employers are paying more to workers while they have to recover by increasing the price of their products, right, etc. All right. So again, the types of inflation: demand pull inflation, when the demand for goods and services is higher in comparison to the production capacity of the economy. Cost push inflation: this happens when the cost of production increases, right? The increase in price of raw materials, for example, labor, for example, that increases the price of products because it costs more to produce the products. And finally, the built-in inflation or anticipatory inflation that is factored into the wages of workers to account for future inflation and enable workers to afford the increase in the price of products or cost of living. Sometimes that increase then results in the increase of the cost of production. Because once again, employers have to pay workers and they have to recover that somehow, right? And that increases the price of production, and that increase in price of production increases the price of products on the shelves, in our supermarkets, in our stores. And this leads to a circular pattern. All right, so this is what inflation is all about and how it impacts your pocketbook.